Hello, and welcome to the Hopes for School podcast, where we amplify student voice and share ideas for educational transformation. My name is Jennifer Casa-Todd. I'm a mom, an educator, co-author of the book Hopes for School, and your host.
And I'm Karen, a co-author of Hopes for School 2 and a current university student.
Amazing. And this is our first podcast episode, and we don't even have the book. But we will have the book. But we really wanted to take an opportunity to share a little bit about what's happening in Hopes for School, what we're excited about, give Karen the opportunity to share her perspective about why she created this book. And throughout the podcast, over the next 10 episodes, we are going to be able to talk to contributors, including a student contributor and the educator contributors to the book. And I'm excited that we begin this journey today with this conversation. So, welcome, Karen. Tell us how you got here. Like, how does a high school student, now a university student, engage in this process of writing a book? Tell us a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. Everything, I would say, started with a blog post that I published for my AP English language class my junior year of high school. It was for Sean Zebart's class, who is also a contributor in our book. And it's the blog post, I'm a loser because of school. And at this time, junior year of high school for me was pretty tough because it's arguably like the most important year of high school for high school students. So a lot of AP classes, a lot of stress, and all of it kind of culminated in this blog post that I wrote. And it was about things that I feel could have been better in school for me and things that I had issues with over the years as a high achieving student. And I also offered some solutions on how I thought that these issues in school could be resolved or made better. So for example, something that I talked about was that, I hold myself to a really high standard for grading. I feel like I'm not resilient because I want to be a perfectionist all the time. And as I wrote about that blog post, I did a lot of research and I ended up publishing it. And it also gained traction later on Twitter after Mr. Zebart posted it and tagged George Carros. So after he responded to it, I was like, this is pretty cool. So I kept writing about student voice and learning for my blog post in that class or for my blog in that class. And eventually we connected, George and I connected, and then I also connected with you, and that led to this book.
I know, and what a journey that has been. A little bit longer than we expected. But for me, I think what was really significant when George introduced you to me was what you said about you being a high achieving student. Because for the most part, I know as an educator, I'm always wondering how we allow all students, right, who aren't high achieving to be engaged in school. And you are all okay. And to read your perspective, to know that maybe it's not as okay as I thought, I think was really what resonated with me. And of course, knowing you and learning more about you and reading your writing, because I have to say, I think you're an amazing writer. That has been an incredible journey, a long but incredible journey. What would you say? And this was originally, I have to be honest with you, the question I asked myself. What would you say to people who are like, well, she started writing. She's a grumpy teenager who's just complaining. Isn't that what teenagers do? Why is this book important?
I can definitely see that being one aspect or one criticism of like my writing our book. But I think that regardless, it's still important because what we're doing is we don't stop at just pointing out these issues or complaining endlessly, but we're also suggesting accessible and actionable solutions and strategies from both the perspective of you and I, as well as other students and other educators throughout our book, that educators can take and apply in their own classrooms to make their classrooms and school a better place. And I also want to emphasize that, this is mostly my experience and my perspective, but there are a lot of issues that students are experiencing that I haven't been able to write about because I haven't experienced them myself. So I also recommend having this book as a starting guide on connecting with students more and seeing how we can reach students and learn what else they're experiencing in school and how we can make school better for them.
Yeah, I think really that's something that has moved me. when it was hard to read some of the points in your book. But it is important to know that those points exist. And then for me, I know in my sections of the book, I reflected on what you said in a really deep way. And that changed even my current situation, the things that I was doing. Just such a simple example that I remember is when you said that you disliked LMSs. And I'm like, what? Like, I think an LMS is a great opportunity for teachers to be able to provide, support to students so they can look at things at different times, and it's, everything's all in one place. But if I remember correctly, what you said about an LMS is that it felt like you didn't have any kind of balance, because assignments were due by default at 11:59, and I hadn't even thought of that. So I know I immediately went in and I changed all of my default deadlines to 9 p.m. because I don't want kids to feel like they need to be up. They might be anyway, but I, as an educator, want to make sure that I am emphasizing that it's important that after 9 p.m. you're not working on my course anymore. So I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank you for all of the moments that, that where you shared some of the things that you would have liked to see different. And I would like to point out that you don't really complain. I mean, I think what I was most impressed with was the amount of research that you also did in the sections of your book, that really reinforce your ideas and your point of view. So it wasn't it. So I want to add that because it wasn't just you complaining. One of the things I'm really excited about is the format of the book. I love the fact that we start with you from the student's desk, and you share your perspective and some of the research that you did, and as well as some other student perspectives. And then there's the from the teacher's desk, where I am able to either respond to something that you've said or go further or suggest something that I did in my own practice around that. I thought that was really exciting. What do you think about the format?
Yeah, I really like it too. And I love that we're learning from other students and other teachers that we've highlighted throughout the book. So we're getting to learn about what teachers from one state or what teachers from one country are doing, and we can apply that, across different educations, different classrooms, which I think is really interesting.
Well, and we should bring up the point, because we didn't yet, that I'm a teacher from Canada. You're a student in California.
In California. Mm-hmm.
And we've never actually met in person.
Yeah, we started this during when COVID was really bad. So.
Yes. And I mean, it's on my bucket list to come and find you in California one day when things settle. Anyway, I do want to share with you a snippet from an email conversation that I had with a friend and fellow Google innovator, Luis Fernando Petrus. He's from Colombia. He's told me how to say that properly. Lewis saw your son in his narrative, and we had an ongoing conversation about that. His son is also a high achieving student. And this is something he shared. He said, Hopes for School offers a vital and insightful look at education, uniquely presented through the powerful perspective of a student, Karen Phan, and the reflective insights of her co-author, Jennifer Casa-Todd, a seasoned educator. This collaboration creates a compelling narrative that challenges traditional educational norms while offering a path towards more student-centered learning. And then he says, I sincerely wish I had more students like Karen in my life. And then later iterates, I wish we had more students like Karen. So thank you for sharing your perspective. And I guess it leads into my question for you. The book is called Hopes for School. What are you, now that you've had time to reflect on, because you started this book in high school, you're now in university, and we've had ongoing conversations about your insights and your reflections. So tell us a little bit about what your hopes for school are now as a university student.
Before I get into that, I also wanted to respond to Luis and say that I'm really grateful that he enjoyed what we wrote about and he enjoyed our book. And I'm also really grateful that George and Paige connected me with you, Jen, because I remember the first draft that I wrote up, the first chapter, it was just all me writing. And we were all like, we think that there could be some more nuance. And I think bringing in you really helped us get to that nuance and also helped me think about how these issues that I experience aren't so black and white and that there are so many different factors that we have to consider, like what environment teachers are in, what support they're allowed to get, what environment students are into, and that's all really important. Something that I'm hoping to learn more as we go along. And then reflecting on our book, I have to say that something that I thought a lot about because I'm in college right now is that the environment in college and high school is really different for me. I think that in high school it was a lot more structured, and I can see that how that's beneficial because I think that on one hand, all of the structure, it gave me a good work ethic. It helped me stay accountable. It helped motivate me and help me, know what I need to do to succeed. But in college, it's a lot more on you type of vibes where it's on you to figure out what you want to do and to make your own schedule to decide if you want to do something or not and what's valuable to you. And that environment in college was a little bit jarring for me at first because in high school I was so used to, this is the rubric that you're going to be graded on. If you don't do this, then it's kind of done for you. But I think in college everything is a lot more creative, especially as an English major, because something that I've been seeing in my English classes as a senior, so throughout all of college, is that your creativity plays a really big part into what you're producing and your grades, especially because I go to a research university, and that emphasis on creativity I think was missing a lot in high school, and it's something that I hope that high school can achieve more.
Thank you. And I so appreciate that. And I know we just touched upon it a little bit in our book, the idea that how how can we change school, but then also add the layer, which didn't exist when we first started, but the layer of AI and what that looks like in terms of being
Mhm.
able to help students or hinder students from being more creative. And so I really appreciate those comments. And I know we've had conversations about, you know, were are you too hard on the school system,
Mhm.
from when you were in high school? Or is this you reflecting on a moment in time when that was your reality and you wished your reality was just a little bit different? And I think that, your comment about um, how it's all nuanced is a really significant one, right? We do touch upon the nuances in this book because teaching is hard. Teaching in, this moment in time, but, you know, I've been in teaching for 30 years in several moments in time. There are lots of external factors that influence what's happening in classrooms. So I love that we touch on that we tackle it, we don't shy away from that, and that we offer both your perspective and my perspective on it. And I can tell you that as a pre-service, I'm teaching pre-service teachers now, and so the next generation of teachers, I have your voice in my head the whole time. Like, how can we make this more student-centered? How can we give our students more agency? Sometimes teachers, they teach the way they were taught. And so, right, how do
Mhm.
we interrupt that in order to ensure that the biggest stakeholders, our students, are play a part and a role in their education. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, I remember bringing that up with you, Jen, about how I was also thinking before this book is published if school needed to be that rigorous and that difficult for me, because in the end, I think that I came out conventionally successful. Like I'm at a good college. I did internships in college, and I feel like I'm in a pretty stable position and place in life right now. So looking back, I'm like, it wasn't really that bad. Like I feel like I making it a little bit more dramatic than it turns out to be. But I'm also thinking about how we tend to downplay kind of our struggles and things that we're going through after we get through them. So I think that on one hand, maybe, yes, it's true that I did have to struggle a little bit to get to where I am today and to learn how to have that good work ethic, to learn how to be resourceful and self sufficient. But there are some aspects of school, especially middle school and high school, that I think didn't have to be as hard as they had to be. Like, for example, I was really obsessed with not making mistakes and trying to be perfect and just not fall into like, or not fall behind essentially. But in college, I feel like I made a lot of mistakes. And unlike high school, I haven't really held on to those mistakes and let them get the best of me. In high school, I remember not being that resilient, but in college, I've made so many mistakes in my programming classes, in my English classes, where my professors are going through a lot of drafts with me. I just wrote a research essay this past quarter and I went through so many revisions with my professor and I was like, oh my God. But I think that I came out of it as a better writer. And it's a mindset that I wish that I had more in high school. So again, on one hand, maybe I did have to go through what I had to go through, these struggles to succeed. But on the other hand, some of them didn't have to be as bad as they actually were.
I know for me, that was one of the things that struck me, right? I want my students to be resilient. You know, and that honestly, that whole chapter and that conversation has impacted me perhaps the most. Some of the things that I do, the things that I'm very careful about, things that I do, the things that I say, giving students the opportunity, really reinforcing that growth mindset versus the fixed mindset, and understanding sometimes from a teacher perspective, you don't quite get how much of an impact that might have on a student and their approach to learning. So I know I really, really valued your contributions, especially on that topic, but all of your contributions in general for the book. So I want to thank you. This has been one of the more rewarding writing experiences of my entire career. And I've written a couple of books and they've all been on my own. And as difficult as I think in some ways of co-authoring a book with someone, I really enjoyed our weekly meetings over time, getting to see you grow up even just a little bit and seeing those perspectives of yours change. Anyone who has seen the book so far has said that they have found it to be of value. So thank you for sharing your voice.
I really appreciate you and the educators who have read our book so far for really enjoying what we've written and being open-minded to having these conversations. I think that's really important moving forward to help students and to make sure that education is a good place for students too.
Yes, absolutely. So in terms of what this podcast is going to look like, we are going to interview Mr. Zebarth. I can't wait to talk to him. We've only communicated online, but he's really the person who inspired this book. So I can't wait for that conversation. We hope to get George Couros on the podcast as well, asking him or talking to him a little bit about what he saw, what potential he looked at when he read your blog post and his idea for, publishing a book with Impress that prominently features a student, which, is so exciting. And then we're going to be interviewing some of the educators who have contributed idea spotlights, as well as a student or two, as well, to get their perspectives. And that's it. And I do want to say that we are going to always end the podcast with just a fun question. What are you currently reading and or watching right now? So I think it might be a good thing for us to end on that note. What are you currently reading and or watching, Karen?
Mm-hmm. Oh, my last read was actually The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin, science fiction novel for my research essay. And I'm currently watching When Life Gives You Tangerines, which is a Korean drama that spans multiple generations.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm going to write those down. I've picked up several book recommendations from you. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your voice in the book. We hope that you'll be able to jump in on future podcasts to be able to share. But I understand as a university student, your time is quite limited. So thank you again for being here today and for sharing your voice. And we will talk to you soon.
Thanks,
Karen.